we love getting out here in the community and talking to y'all. This one is called Understanding Dementia and Alzheimer's Disease, and it is a collaboration with Hendrix College because we collaborate with them as well on our grant, and they have students that are interested in older adults, healthcare professions, like Peyton's hoping to go to nursing school real soon, so we collaborate with Hendrix with the students and get them interested in us old folks, as I like to say, so that we have some future healthcare workers in the future. So anyway, we are happy to be here with you today to help you hopefully get a better understanding of Alzheimer's and dementia. So I'm going to move right along. Again, we are funded through a federal HRSA grant, so that is my grant number. If you're very, very interested in grants and want the number, there it is. I won't make you repeat that. All right, so what are we going to do today? We're going to talk about the aging process in general, just some general statistics. We're going to talk about what is normal aging, what usually happens in our brain, and then what more specifically is dementia as the overall topic, and specifically Alzheimer's disease as a type of dementia. We're going to talk about risk factors and some healthy aging tips because research shows that that's what we need to be doing since they don't have a reason as to why dementia and Alzheimer's exist yet. We're going to share some healthy things that we can do to hopefully stave it off for a while. And then we're going to go over just a few dementia-friendly communication tips so that if you are dealing with anybody that has a dementia or Alzheimer's, it should help you a little bit. All right, so in Arkansas, we are a state that has about 17%, a little bit over that, of Arkansans that are over the age of 65. 10% of the 65-year-olds are living below the poverty line. And you say, well, why are you throwing that statistic in there? Well, because one of the things we're going to learn in a little bit is poverty, the lack of good food and education does affect our brain health. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Another thing that's very, very important in the Alzheimer's and dementia world is caregivers. We can't do this without our caregivers, whether they're a paid caregiver or a family member. 1 in 4 adults in Arkansas are a caregiver, so that's a big number if you think about it. And if you look at that number even closer, 60% of them end up being women. Well, that's just the way it falls. It's not, anything scientific. It's just 60% of women usually end up being the caregiver for either their spouse, their mother, their grandfather, somebody like that, which affects lots of other things. When you get into the nitty-gritty, it affects their work. A lot of times they take off work or they cut back, they work part-time. They're trying to take care of someone long distance. So those are just all the things that we think about when we think about caregivers. 40% of Arkansans that are doing this caregiving are doing it unpaid, okay? So that's almost, you're getting up there to 50%. They're doing it out of the goodness of their heart because they love the person they're taking care of. And in most instances, they've been doing it for 2 years or more. So this is just not something that they're doing for a day and then they get to go on and do the rest of their life. They're doing this for a lot of time. So what goes on in the normal brain as we age? Well, I'm getting close to that old mark. I'm 64, so I can talk about this. You may experience slower recall. That's normal, okay? And you might forget parts of an event as we age, but you don't forget the entire event. And what we like to say is we might remember it 6 or 8 hours later, we're at the dinner table with our spouse and we're going, oh yeah, I know what that person's name was. I finally remember. So we are able to go back and retrace our steps, retrace our thoughts, and remember, oh yeah, that was Susie Smith. I knew her from book club at the church 10 years ago. Okay, we are able to do that. We remain able to follow the written and spoken word. Now, it might take us a lot longer. If you hand me a new cell phone, a new TV remote, it's going to take me a while, but my interest is there. Okay, I want to learn something new. I still want to try it. We are going to require, as we age, as I tell my family, I need less noise, less distractions so that I can learn something. So that's just general aging. We need to turn off the TV and the radio and focus on what we are trying to learn. But our capacity to learn does stay intact. It just may take us longer to absorb it. You might have to show me 3 times how to use my new remote, and then I'll get it, okay? But we still want to learn, and our learning stays intact. So then we get into, well then, Laura, what is dementia? Well, as I've mentioned, dementia is an overall term. Just like if someone was to say to you, well, I have heart disease, you would say, well, what specific things are wrong with your heart, okay? Dementia is an overall term of conditions or symptoms that are characterized by things like a personality change, a decline in their memory. You might notice they're using a lot of sticky notes trying to remember what's going on just in their own life, let alone in the life of someone else. They may begin to have language problems, the simplest of words. They might point to their watch and say, "What do you call this thing?" And it's just very, very simple things that they can't remember. That next one, problem solving, is if you're intimately involved with that person, your spouse, your loved one, you're going to notice that they don't want to solve problems anymore. They just totally quit. They might have been a great cook. They might have been a great whatever fly fisherman. They don't like to do their hobby anymore because it's just too taxing on their brain. And other thinking skills are involved in this. And I underline the last part of this because this is the part where the doctors and the nurses and people working with you will say, how is their ability to perform everyday activities, and are they still able to be independent? And are they able to manage their medicines? Are they able to go to the store, cook, clean, those kind of things? So that last part is very, very important. Are they able to do their everyday activities and remain independent? All right? In dementia, the changes that are going on are caused by this disease in the brain where our neurons in our brain, if you go way back to your science classes, they're not able to communicate anymore, okay? They're bound up by things called plaques and tangles, and I like to call it very simplified, like if you had electrical wire that has that plastic coating on it, it's to protect the shocks and the message from getting there. That's what's going on in the brain. So they're not able to communicate with each other. Eventually, it affects behaviors, feelings, and relationships because we aren't able to have that relationship with the person we love. Neither are they, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more later, but it does affect more than just their thinking skills. You might have the sweetest, nicest old lady or man that starts cussing and saying things that they never would have said, so it affects their behavior as well. And we have to remember it is the disease speaking, not the person. Here's another visual, because I'm a visual learner. This is the umbrella to show you that dementia is the umbrella concept. And then we have Alzheimer's, which is the one we hear about the most, and is about 50 to 75% of cases of dementia are Alzheimer's, so that's why we hear about it the most. Then we have vascular dementia. This is what my grandparents used to call hardening of the arteries, right? You're not getting the nutrients and the blood, the oxygen up to your brain, and it does eventually result in dementia. Then we have Lewy body dementia, which is a different type of protein that builds up in the brain and causes those same problems. But usually people with Lewy body dementia have more vivid dreams, and they tend to act out their dreams is one of the things that doctors will get clued into early on. Frontotemporal dementia is even rarer. So there's just you another picture to kind of put it in perspective of the different types of dementias. And I just did those, so I'm not going to. And a lot of people, that last one is mixed pathology dementias because they're not for sure, okay? They can have lots of different types of dementia going on. All right, cerebrovascular dementia, I just mentioned this is vascular. They will also see a decline in thinking skills, and this is based on the blockage or reduced blood flow to the brain, oxygen and nutrients. Parkinson's disease is more of a neurological disease, but eventually it affects the brain, and you also get dementia with that. And that's a lot on that slide, but it's just I get asked that question a lot. So if you have someone that has Parkinson's, it starts out with the rigors or shakes sometimes, but they need to definitely see a neurologist to determine that it's not something else. But the symptoms usually start with tremors and shakiness. You'll see a very shuffled walk, and then it can eventually lead to a dementia. So what is Alzheimer's disease then? We've talked about all the other ones. It's the most common type of dementia. It's a progressive disease. It starts with mild cognitive impairment, mild memory loss. You might see them, like we mentioned, Post-it notes around. They will remember things that happened a long, long time ago, but if you were visiting them and you asked them, what'd you have for breakfast today, and say it's only lunchtime, they cannot tell you, okay? It's the short-term memory that starts going first. And in the brain, the hippocampus area is where this usually starts taking effect first, and that's where our thoughts, our memories, and our language skills, all those things are going on in there. So there's these protons, I've mentioned them before, that get in there. I think we've talked about that, a lot of those things, but it is a disease of the brain, and memory loss, again, is the first symptom. So it's important that people talk to their physicians, or if you're responsible for someone that you're taking care of and you notice this and you're allowed to go to their annual physicals with them or to a doctor's appointment, please ask your physician or provider to also go over memory issues, because they can do some very simple testing right there at the appointment. So who has Alzheimer's disease? Well, in 2022, there are about 6.7 million Americans that were living with this disease. The number, though, is projected to go up to 14 million. So that's why we're out here trying to raise awareness about it. Can you imagine what it's going to do to our healthcare system? How many caregivers we're going to need, nurses, doctors, everybody to take care of these people, nursing homes, all those kind of things. So young people can get Alzheimer's disease, but it's very, very rare. Good news is we're all living longer, but now we have this dementia and Alzheimer's to deal with. And it first appears usually around 60. That's just an average, okay? But we're going to show some slides that after the age 65, your chances increase, all right, significantly. Here's just a visual from Alzheimer's Association that shows out of the 6.7 million people how it's broken down by age group. And it's just, again, the purple is the 65 to 74-year-olds. I'm sorry, purple is 75 to 84. And if you look at that green or aqua color, it goes up. There's 2.37 million. So as you get older, your chances of getting Alzheimer's do increase. It about doubles when you get to 85. Here's just another visual of that, looking at how, if you'll notice the green on the bottom and the gold, you don't really see a huge increase, but boy, when you get up into your older years, that's when your chances increase. So just like to show you that so that we understand what's going on with Alzheimer's disease and the future. This is a video that we like to show that kind of pulls it all together for people that may not have a strong science background, and it shows you what's actually going on as the disease progresses.
What is Alzheimer's disease? Alzheimer's is a slow, fatal disease of the brain affecting 1 in 10 people over the age of 65. No one is immune. The disease comes on gradually as 2 abnormal protein fragments called plaques and tangles accumulate in the brain and kill brain cells. They start here in the hippocampus, the part of the brain where memories are first formed. Over many years' time, the plaques and tangles slowly destroy the hippocampus, and it becomes harder and harder to form new memories. Simple recollections from a few hours or days ago that the rest of us might take for granted are just not there. After that, more plaques and tangles spread into different regions of the brain, killing cells and compromising function wherever they go. This spreading around is what causes the different stages of Alzheimer's. From the hippocampus, the disease spreads here to the region of the brain where language is processed. When that happens, it gets tougher and tougher to find the right word. Next, the disease creeps toward the front of the brain, where logical thought takes place. Very gradually, a person begins to lose the ability to solve problems, grasp concepts, and make plans. Next, the plaques and tangles invade the part of the brain where emotions are regulated. When this happens, the patient gradually loses control over moods and feelings. After that, the disease moves to where the brain makes sense of things it sees, hears, and smells. In this stage, Alzheimer's wreaks havoc on a person's senses and can spark hallucinations. Eventually, the plaques and tangles erase a person's oldest and most precious memories, which are stored here in the back of the brain. Near the end, the disease compromises a person's balance and coordination, and in the very last stage, it destroys the part of the brain that regulates breathing and the heart. The progression from mild forgetting to death is slow and steady, and takes place over an average of 8 to 10 years. It is relentless and, for now, incurable. Helping your family, friends, and neighbors to better understand Alzheimer's will reduce stigma, improve care, and even help the fight for a cure. Thanks for helping to do your part. Learn more at www.dementia www.aboutalz.org.
Did that help kind of put it in perspective? It's just a very progressive disease, and there is no rhyme or reason as to some people have the emotional part happen before other things happen. So it just really, if you've seen one case of Alzheimer's, they've taught us, you've seen one, because it's different for each person. Okay, let's drill down and talk about just about Alzheimer's disease in Arkansas. There are approximately 58,000 Arkansans over the age of 65 that has Alzheimer's. It is the 6th leading cause of death in Arkansas, so that's why we're out here trying to raise awareness of it. And we have one of the highest death rates in America from Alzheimer's disease. So it's a real thing that we are passionate about educating people and caregivers about, because it is a health concern for Arkansas. The projected numbers are only going to get bigger. If you notice, we're going to go from about 58,000 to about 67,000, all right, which is a 15% increase by the year 2025. So again, what's that going to do to our healthcare system, to our caregivers, to the working population that are trying to take care of their loved ones? It's just something we have got to handle as a state. I do like to talk briefly about how it affects other ethnic groups and nationalities. If you'll notice the part from this, I love this picture from the CDC. It shows the percentage of adults that are age 65 and older based on their ethnicity and race, and it hits about the African American population about 14%, Hispanics about 12%, and non-Hispanics about 10%. Researchers don't know why yet. They're still studying this. And if you drill down, again, it's women that are affected more, okay? And nobody knows for sure why. We're going to talk a little bit about heredity, diet, lack of exercise, lack of education here in a little bit, but they're still trying to figure it out. There's just another visual that shows the projection that if we go from about 5 million to the 14 or 16 million. So again, it's just on a trajectory to increase. Some things that I like to talk about, what we can do. Worsening memory is, like I said, one of the earliest signs, and it does affect, this picture even shows the American Indian population with a higher increase, with about a 17% increase. So, and they actually reviewed people that were 45 years and older. And this is just initial memory loss, which is a precursor to mild cognitive and Alzheimer's. So it's affecting different ethnic groups differently. But what can we do? First of all, we need to talk to our healthcare provider if we have any concerns about our memory. We need to maintain a good blood pressure, maintain our diabetes, all those diseases that we may already have. We need to try to lose weight if we can. All those things they think play a role in what's going on. Basically, if you're taking good care of your body and your heart, you're also helping your brain. They want us to be physically active, and prevent hearing loss if we can. Hearing and memory issues are tied together too. That's a whole nother program if you want to. It's online on our website, but there's a big correlation between hearing loss and memory issues. If we can, please quit smoking and get help for any of those things like smoking, abuse of alcohol, any kind of drug is not good for our brain as well. And then also get help for depression. If you know someone that's struggling with that, encourage them to get help with that as well, because all these things play into our health and particularly into our mind or brain health, as we like to call it. I do like to show this picture of the brain just so folks get a picture of what's going on inside the brain of their loved one. As you can see, the brain on the left is shrinking. The tissue's not as compact. That's why the cells are dying and the brain is actually shrinking, okay? The person is not doing this on purpose. I can't stress that enough to people that are dealing with this disease. It's a disease of the brain and it's going on and they cannot do anything about it, and we haven't figured out how to stop it as of right now. I want to go over what dementia is not. It's not a normal part of aging. You can live to be 100 and not get any kind of dementia, okay? So when people joke about, we make the sad joke about, well, I'm forgetting things, I must have dementia. No, okay, it's really not a good joke. It's not a normal part of aging. It's not an intellectual disability. It's not a psychiatric illness. I like to tell people it's also not contagious. You can't get it just from, being next to people, and it's not delirium. if you've been in the healthcare field or you know someone that's had delirium, that comes on very quickly and fast. It's usually because of some kind of a hospitalization where they might have been in an ICU for a week. We had a lot of this with COVID. They get delirious as to what day of the week it is, what time it is, and it's usually because they have some kind of a severe infection. A lot of times it's because they have a severe bladder infection and they get delirium, okay? Delirium can be fixed and turned around with the proper procedures and medicines. So it's not delirium. All right, let's talk about those risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. Well, we all want to live longer, don't we? It's like, yes, I do, okay? But age is our number one risk factor, all right? As we age, our risk for developing it. But remember that word risk. It's just a risk factor. It's not a guarantee. As I said, you can live to be very, very old and not get a dementia. But our chances go up about every 5 years after the age of 65. And after the age of 85, our chances are 50%. So it is one of those things that it's do we want to live longer? But we don't control that, all right? So in rare cases, as I mentioned earlier, you could get this as young as 30 to 50, and I'm calling 30 to 50 young. I don't care. Some of you youngsters might not think 50 is young, but it is young. All right, the other risk factor, there's two things, age and heredity. All right, but even that, don't get depressed if you think that someone in your family has it, because it's still not a guarantee. Your risk is slightly higher. I'm not a statistician, don't claim to be, but you do need to know that it's still not a absolute. Genetics do not equal your destiny, okay? So don't get in a panic mode about that. The APOE4 gene is what's correlated to the late onset Alzheimer's disease, and they're telling us that things that we're doing now, healthy lifestyle, eating more like a Mediterranean diet, all right, low fat, limit alcohol consumption, that dirty word, physical activity, exercise, we've got to try that. And again, not smoking. And if you have diabetes, managing that, whether it's type 1 or type 2, because that affects the glucose that's either going to or too much going to your brain. So we need to manage diabetes as well. Other possible risk factors, I know this is a busy slide, but there is research out there showing that low education, like I mentioned, hearing loss, traumatic brain injury. So if you're in a sport where you have a chance of hitting your brain or doing damage to your brain, please take caution on that. Managing hypertension we talked about, avoiding excess alcohol, we mentioned obesity, smoking. People don't think a lot about this one, depression and social isolation. Okay, those are huge. We want to avoid those. If you know somebody that you think is depressed, either reach out to them or suggest they get help. If you know older adults that are socially isolated, please also encourage them to do things out in the community. We need to engage our brains for as long as we can, and isolation is not good for us. We as human beings were not designed to be isolated, okay? Again, physical inactivity is not good for us, and managing diabetes, and in some places, the research is showing that maybe air pollution plays a factor in what we're taking into our system, obviously. But I just thought this was a great thing to go over, because a lot of people don't think that these mentioned 12 risk factors above, but they're saying 40% worldwide possibly, were related to these things, so we need to look at it. So what can we do? Well, we've talked about this too. We need to exercise, we need to manage all of our cardiovascular things. If you're doing something good for your heart and your body, you're helping your brain. So eating a healthy diet, all those kind of things. Protect your hearing. And I know if you're a young person, I can't preach that enough. There's things like yard equipment, all the stuff, music. We walk around with these things in our ears. What is it going to do to our hearing in the long term? We've got to protect our hearing. A lot of people don't think about sleep. Sleep is very, very important. That's where our memories are formed. It's where our brain at night gets to declutter. It's kind of like turning off your computer or running a software program to clean out your computer. You need to do the same thing with your brain at night. So sleep is very important. If your loved one is not getting good sleep, talk to their healthcare provider about that. It could be sleep apnea, and they make machines and things like that to help them. We've got to get that good oxygen to our brain to help our memories as well. We've talked about education. Try to get as much education as you can, and then keep learning even when you get older. Keep learning and learn something new. Don't just keep repeating the same old things. Learn something new, and avoid that traumatic brain injury. If you're riding scooters or anything like that, you might want to think about it again. This is just the same picture, but I like to show it from CDC about what we can do. We'll skip through that one. All right, and these slides are small, I apologize, but I want to recommend that if you are concerned and you have family members, this is called the 10 warning signs, and they're out there on the Alzheimer's website, the National Alzheimer's Association, and I'd like you to just, when you have time, even go out and look at it. We've talked about memory loss that disrupts daily life is number 1. Those challenges to planning or solving problems is number 2. Difficulty completing familiar tasks, something that your loved one has done over and over and over again. If that becomes harder for them, please ask your physician, what do you think's going on, and ask them if you can go with them to their doctor's appointments. Those are the 3 that usually start off a conversation with a healthcare provider. If they become confused today, time, or place, that usually happens later on, but it is one of the warning signs. And then this last one that people don't think about on this slide is trouble understanding visual images. And my grandmother had this problem. That's how we first got clued in. We knew there was a little memory thing, but she would get right on the bumper of the car in front of her, okay? Well, it's that visual spatial thing that's going on in their brain, and they literally have a problem with that. So vision changes, and they're not just related to cataracts. This is truly a spatial thing where they can't judge space, all right? So it's a real thing to look out for. In the last 5, I've talked about this, but new problems with speaking or words, and sometimes if you still notice, if people don't write like they used to, but their writing has changed. Maybe it starts off with a larger, it wouldn't be a font, but in their handwriting it starts out larger and then it decreases to a smaller script or print, okay? This next one is the one that we talked about where they misplace things to the extent that they can't go backwards. You know, if you and I come in the front door where we usually come in and we put our keys down, but we're supposed to come in the back door, usually through the garage or something, but we come in a different door for some reason, we can go backwards and figure out, oh yeah, they were cleaning the carpet, so I came in a different door today, my keys must be up there. A person with dementia or Alzheimer's that is progressing, they cannot do those steps to go backwards. They cannot figure it out, and it is the disease process causing that, okay? This next one scares me for people that are living alone, this decreased judgment or poor judgment at all, okay? And I know you're shaking your head. You have a mother that's going through it right now, but we don't want them to get taken advantage of. So this becomes a safety issue. We don't want someone coming to their door, number 1, taking advantage of them. We don't want them to get a phone call where they give out, you know, information that should not be given out to them, bank account records, social security numbers, anything like that, because these scammers, they can do it. They're pros, and yeah, ask for your Medicare number. Right. Right, absolutely. I know. But all those kind of things means that something is going on. The last 2 are probably things you will notice if you're more intimately involved with the person and know them better, but they start withdrawing from work and social activities, more so the social activities, change in mood and personality. People tell us that researchers have interviewed early on, when they start getting this issue, they don't want to go out in public. They can't remember the names. And they're talking about the people that are like in their Sunday school class, their book club, people that they have done things with, traveled. It's embarrassing for them, so they no longer want to be embarrassed themselves, and they don't want to a lot of times put their spouse or their loved one in that situation to always be saying, who is that, or how do I know them? And so what they do is they just start saying, you go ahead and go to church, I'm not going to go today, I'm not feeling well. Well, then before you know it, the caregiver says, well, I'm going to stay home with you, I don't want you staying home by yourself. And then you have 2 people that become isolated, lonely, and it's just not good for everybody. So it's a big circle, but those changes are things that we need to always be aware of. What are some symptoms? We've talked about these, but keeping track of your purse and wallet, a big one that sometimes people, if you don't live with them, say you're a child that lives out of state, all of a sudden they're getting these notices that their gas has been cut off, and you say, Mom, Dad, what's going on? I don't know, they just cut off my electricity or my gas. Well, it's because they haven't been paying their bills, okay? They set the bill down if they're still getting a paper mail, you know, they set it down, they say, oh, I'll do that later, but later never comes, okay? And especially if you live out of town, that's a hard one. You'll notice that maybe your loved one's losing weight. If they're living by themselves, they're not planning meals, they're not cooking meals. They might just say, oh, I'm going to have me some popcorn for dinner or something. You know, it's whatever they can scrounge up, maybe some peanut butter and crackers, because meal planning and preparing is just too overwhelming for them. You might notice that it becomes very, very hard for them to remember appointments. They have sticky notes everywhere, but still can't seem to get places on time. This one about traveling really, really is something that we want to drive home. If you have a loved one that is still driving, but they're having trouble retracing their steps, please, please talk to a healthcare provider, talk to your other family members, and have that awfully hard conversation. You don't want them to say they're going to the store, they get turned around and they just keep driving and driving and driving, and they get somewhere where they're not supposed to be, they don't know where they are, and someone takes advantage of them, okay? That's just a huge one, traveling. Or say they just decide they're going to go for a walk and the same thing happens. That's even more, devastating because that can result in death if they're out overnight or missing for a couple of days. So we don't want that. And again, the activities of daily living, maybe you notice that they're not showering or bathing and they were someone that was always immaculate when they went out of the house, okay? And that withdrawal again is another. All right, early stages of Alzheimer's, and this is just so you kind of, if you're dealing with it right now with someone that you know, initially it's just that initial memory loss, difficulty concentrating, maybe a little disoriented, small personality changes, maybe a little verbal difficulty, coordinating things, maybe some word, what they call it anomia, but it's just finding word difficulty. And decline in the grooming and poor judgment. These are just early stages of it. Maybe it's just every once in a while. But then as the disease progresses to the middle stages, it's even more and more problems with short-term memory, mood swings. And this is where we tell people, if you've seen them one day or one person with Alzheimer's, the next day they could be very upset and almost violent, and that's not their normal demeanor, okay? So one day is one day with someone with Alzheimer's because the next could be totally different. Their ability to manage time and know what day of the week gets worse. Sleep disturbances become huge. A lot of times we as caregivers are happy that they're sleeping the day away, but they have slept the day away and then they're up all night, which can lead to problems where they maybe try to get out of the house or whatever. They take medicines when you're not around or awake. So that sleep disturbance is huge. Then we start getting into the brain is telling them that they're not even hungry anymore. You might fix their favorite meal, you've had them over, or you live with them, and they just say, I don't want that, I can't even taste it. So huge changes in eating habits, and you'll see them beginning to lose weight. The other thing that happens at this part of the disease is they become very dependent on their caregiver or their family. Well, think about it. They know they're safe with that person, okay? They've known that person for a long time. So they are going to be very dependent on that person, almost to the point where the caregiver cannot do anything by themselves. They will literally follow them everywhere. Some cases, you'll see more of a restlessness with your loved one. They just pace, constantly pace. They're not happy. They just got to be pacing. Then in the very late stages, they require constant supervision. This is where they're, usually in care 24/7 or have someone in their home with them. The long and the short-term memory are becoming impaired. Very few words left in their vocabulary. A hard one for family and friends is they may not recognize you, okay? And again, you can't take it personal because it's not them, it's their brain that doesn't recognize you, okay? And I know that's very, very hard. In some cases, they don't even recognize themselves. They walk in front of a mirror and they'll say, who is that? And it's actually a reflection of themselves. So it is the brain. Then if you think about the brain, it tells our body what to do. Eventually, it's not telling our body how to control our bowels and bladders anymore. It's not telling us how to chew or how to swallow. So that's why choking is a big thing in nursing homes or people that have the disease progressed a lot. As you can imagine, their motor skills just dwindle away, and a lot of Alzheimer's patients are either in wheelchairs all the time or become bedridden at the very end. And it's because your brain's controlling all that, and it's just the end of the disease process. All right, memory loss can be caused by other things, and I want to go over just because we all need to take care of our mental health as well as our physical health. If you are depressed or know someone that's suffering with depression and they're also having memory issues, it can be caused from really, really bad depression, okay? So just be sure they're talking to someone about it. If your loved one starts a new medicine, we recommend you journal anytime they start a new medicine. How are they doing? Has anything changed? Because over the course of 3 to 5 to 7 days, once that medicine builds up in their system, you could also see memory issues get worse on a new medicine. So they might be treating something else is going on, but it's causing the memory to get worse. And the only way anymore, we are all so busy that we can actually really go to our physician and say, here's when they started this medicine, here's what I've documented, and they love to see that. So y'all that are in the health profession know that they love concrete things that say, hey, I started this medicine, or my loved one did, and within 5 days, they're even worse, okay? Of course, excess use of alcohol can cause memory loss. In rare cases, you could have thyroid or vitamin deficiencies, not so much in the US, but they are things that we need to think about. Some dementia-friendly communication skills. Well, we just have to slow down, and that's hard for me, but this person is still, maybe, if they're not very far along in the disease, trying to process what we just asked them, what we spoke to them about, so we have to allow time for them to process. They tell us in our training that we should wait a minute or two for someone to give us a response if we're talking to someone with Alzheimer's or dementia. Well, I don't know about you, but when you're trying to deal with your loved one and you ask them a question and you wait 2 minutes, you almost can't do it, okay? It's very hard. We want answers. What do you want for dinner? You're not going to wait 2 minutes, okay? So we just have to take into consideration their processing of what they're thinking. We need to use shorter, simpler sentences and only ask one thing at a time. Well, my husband would tell you, she can't do that, okay? We can't ask one thing at a time. We want to know this, this, and this, all right? So we have to think about how we're speaking. We always still have to remain calm. It doesn't help to shout at them. It's not going to solve the problem, but we have to check ourselves as well. What are we doing? How are we speaking to them? We tell people that you have to become a good detective. You have to listen with your eyes, your ears. You have to look at them for body signals. Maybe they're using nonverbal communication with us. Maybe they're sitting over there going like this, which they're cold, okay? So we have to use all of our senses to communicate with them. We have to use dignity and respect. Smile, they still, until the very, very end, love to see us smile at them, look them in the eye. If you know their first name and you're on that kind of relationship with them, they love to be called by their first names. It's just those memories go last for them. And they know if we're being nice to them. If they do get upset, we need to apologize, and what we say is try to redirect them. People with Alzheimer's and dementia still want to feel needed and loved. If you can come up with something little for them to do, if you're staying with them at home or you're with them in some capacity, ask them to help you fold clothes. We tell all of our caregivers, keep a bunch of clothes in the dryer, turn the dryer on for a few minutes, have some warm towels, and say, Mom, Dad, Susie, will you help me fold these towels? And it might seem very mundane, but they love to feel needed. They can help you set the table. They can help do little things, maybe out in the yard. Help me pick up pine cones if they're still able to move around, things like that. But include them as much as you can. They love to reminisce, so we tell caregivers early on, be sure you have photo albums and maybe simplify them with putting large print names of either pets or favorite people that were in their lives, because they love to reminisce. And if they are upset for whatever reason, if you can get them seated and start talking to them about, let's go back and look at your old photo album, they love that. Love, love, love it, okay? The one about avoiding arguing or embarrassing them. We have to join their reality. If their brain is telling them right now that it's 1960 and they're at the Cubs game, any of us 6 or 8 people here cannot change their mind. It is 1960 and they're at the Cubs game. Are they hurting us by saying that or thinking that? No. So we tell people, just join their reality for the minute, for the hour, and go with it. You know, they're not physically in any harm. Yes, people say, well, that's lying. Well, it might be a little, we call it little fiblet, but join their reality and enjoy that with them right then and there. Because we tell people, you're not going to win that argument. You are never, ever, ever going to convince them that it's not whatever's going on in their brain. And if they're not hurting you or themselves, all's good, all right? Then we always tell our caregivers we do have to find some humor along the way, however that is. If they like to watch funny movies, if there was an old comedian they loved, if you have old family videos, show them. They will start laughing and having fun, okay? Again, it's that reminiscing kind of thing. They love it. And do that for as long as you can. I like to close with Maya Angelou. She has a great statement about, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And when we're dealing with people with Alzheimer's, that's pretty much it. They still know until the very, very end how we're making them feel. There's research out there that talks about that. So please just keep that in mind. And I know if any of you are on the caregiver journey, that's hard to do. It's very hard to do. We have lots of other free online programs that if you're wanting to learn other things, you can go to our website, uams.edu. agec.uams.edu, and we have other programs you can watch at your leisure from your home if you have Wi-Fi. If not, libraries will help you find these and you can watch them. They're all about 50 minutes, so you can learn everything from disaster preparedness, heart disease, all kinds of things, heart health. So those are free. How do you get in touch with us? Well, I've said our website, but here it is again. For those of you that do Facebook and Twitter and all those things, we're out there doing that as well. We also have a podcast series on our website, and we have lots of caregiver tips and conversations out there on our podcast program. And this is me. If you have any questions later or after the fact, I'm also going to be here, take questions afterwards. But for anybody watching online, you can reach me. There's my email and my phone number. So again, I am part of UAMS, and we are part of a federally funded HRSA grant, and we're able to bring these programs to you through our grant and through this collaboration with Hendrix. So that's how I have my intern for the spring. So we are all about healthy aging in Arkansas. Anybody have any questions right now? We have a calendar out there on our website too of upcoming caregiver events, programs, tips, all those kind of things. So yes, Dr. Guess.
I have a question. First of all, thank you.
You're welcome.
So when you mentioned several times the growing number of individuals with Alzheimer's in Arkansas and in the country, is that because the incident rate is increasing or because demographic aging of the population, or is it both?
I think it's a combination of both, but mostly, like I said, it's good news we're all living longer, but age is one of the risk factors. So, statistically, we're living longer, okay? But they also haven't proven that, is it because we're eating such a crap diet or we're not exercising like we should, all those kind of things. But I think it's both, if you were to, yeah. But Arkansas, yeah, pollution could be a big one too. We might find out later, pollution, breathing, some of the things, construction workers, things like that. Stress, there are so many factors there. And the medical treatments right now are expensive and they're not approved by Medicare. The latest drug that's out is an IV and it's not approved yet, but it doesn't stop the disease. It slows down the progression. So nothing yet that just, like you have a blocked artery, they can go in and put a stent in. We don't have anything like that that just cold stops it. Yes, ma'am.
So thank you for being here.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
No, I'm sorry, I was.
You're fine.
But, so as my grandfather was aging, there was a conversation that my mom had with his doctor at some point, and whatever it was they were talking about, he said, hey, if your dad is whatever age he is, if he hasn't shown signs by that age, the likelihood of anything happening is slim to none. Did we mishear that? Did we misremember that? Or is there kind of this timeline that if you get to 80 without anything, or 85?
Like you missed the bullet?
Yeah.
No, I can't say that for sure. But if you have a family history, again, heredity is just one risk factor, age and heredity. But if your family has a long history of not ever having that, then I'm not, like I said, I'm not a statistician, but if you roll the dice, your odds are way better, okay, than someone that is older and has long line of family history of people that get dementia or Alzheimer's, even in their 70s or 80s. But no, if you make it to a long age and don't have it, you're doing great, or your loved one is doing great. But there's still no guarantee that at 90, our brain at some point just gets old as well. But a lot of times they die from something else, heart disease, something else. Yeah.
With Alzheimer's in particular, they say that the changes start 15 to 20 years.
Oh, they're saying that, yeah.
Recognizable, it shows up.
Yeah, they're saying 15 to 20 years before you ever show symptoms is when things are going on up here.
Yeah.
which is why they're saying to eat right and not do all the fatties and the alcohol and those kind of things. So again, if anything you're doing to help your body and your heart overall is helping your brain. And your brain is your powerhouse. Yes, we need our heart, we need our bladder, all those things, but the brain is what's telling your body what to do, to walk, to think, to learn, to exercise, to eat, So it's an amazing body and how it all works. I wish we had a cure for it or something that worked. Well, I appreciate your time. Look at our calendar. We have other caregiver programs coming up that are several hours in length where they're specifically attuned to caregivers, and we go through a lot of questions and answers and spend time actually with caregivers. The other thing I want to stress is please, if you're dealing with this disease or even just us as adults, anybody, have your legal paperwork done. Have your powers of attorney, your estate work, your will done while you still have all your brain power intact so that you get to say how you want things taken care of. How do you want to die? How do you want to be treated? Do you want it, all those kind of things. And does someone have the power to pay your bills? All those kind of things to get you the proper care that you need. That's another thing that we're out here preaching about from AJEC is for anybody that's an adult. If you have any assets, anything, you might think you don't have anything. When you die, someone's going to fight over it or it's going to go different places. So have it the way you want it and get it done. You can get it done reasonably and then know that you have it the way you want it done. And more importantly, that someone can help you if you get sick. Who is that person that you want to be able to pay your bills, maybe sell stocks or bonds to be able to help you so that they can get you the care that you need? Otherwise, the state will dictate. So, okay. Well, thank y'all. And thank you, Hendrix.